Hi, welcome back. So in this segment, we're going to talk about assumptions. And assumptions fall under the last of the 5 steps that comprise the logic bridge. The first one we discussed was the categorical form, then the characteristic of the start of the line of reasoning. Number 3 was the characteristic of the finish of the line of reasoning. Number 4 was the linkage, or how the premises connect. The last one often neglected, that's also part of the structure of a line of reasoning, is the assumptions. And for each linked premise, any associated non-linking assumptions that provide some degree of support, and that support can be necessary or ancillary to that linked premise, are appropriately added. So let's look at an example here. Here we have our logic template and familiar argument. The first premise is the president was born in Hawaii. The second premise is any who, then you repeat the previous predicate, was born in Hawaii, is a natural-born U.S. citizen. Therefore, our conclusion, the president is a natural-born U.S. citizen. So when we look at the logic bridge up here, you can see premise 1 and premise 2, and our amount of certainty travels across that logic bridge. But besides these linking premises, every premise can have one or many supporting assumptions that contribute to the strength of that premise. So let's look at the one here. Looking at premise number 2, it says, any who was born in Hawaii is a natural-born citizen. Well, when you go looking for assumptions, you start tracking into your understanding of the world and how things work. And in this case, for this to be true, number 2, you're assuming that the person was born when Hawaii was a state or U.S. territory. Because if that wasn't so, if it was prior to that time, premise number 2 would not be true. So when you're looking for necessary assumptions, you examine each premise and you consider your understanding of how the world works. And this is where, under the supporting assumptions column, this is where you list the assumptions for each of the premises, because your assessment of the strength of these assumptions can affect the overall strength of the logic bridge. So here we've talked about necessary assumptions. There can also be ancillary assumptions, which means they can contribute to the support, but they're not absolutely necessary. Here we have one in this argument. When we look at premise number 2 is any or one who was born in Hawaii is a natural-born U.S. citizen. Well, here, if you knew that the person was born in 1961, that would lend some support in your mind to the likelihood that premise number 2 is true, because you would know that someone born in 1961 was after Hawaii became a state. So there's that concern or that exception that might have arose is not a concern. So both necessary and ancillary assumptions need to be considered and added to your logic template to be able to fully and completely represent the line of reasoning that you're considering. Now, in another segment, we're going to talk about assumption sets, that addresses when there's certain typical types of reasoning you can often find accompanying assumptions that always connect with those. Thank you.